you walk us through, Dr. Code, the last several days from your vantage point? What happened Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
Lots of energy drinks. So what's been going on is that a number of us, including me, as some of you report, have been strongly committed to the maintenance of the Pac-12 conference as a thing. A West Coast conference of schools that have been around for over 100 years, playing together in a regional environment, committed to similar objectives about student-athlete success and so forth and so on. And so along the way, what has happened the last few days is that we were offered a media contract by the Apple Corporation, which was a technological 23rd century Star Trek thing of really unbelievable capability that we were very interested in, ASU was very interested in. Digitization of all ASU football games, all men's basketball games, and all women's basketball games instantly. Available anywhere in the world at a touch of the button from any device, anywhere. Digitally then manipulable by the watcher, both during the game and between multiple games at the same time, as well as usable by athletes for recruitment and so forth and so on after the games as an archived thing. And so we thought that there was some risk but huge opportunity. So several of the schools were committed to that, but it created another destabilizing moment of sort of tradition versus this modern thing. So a lot of back and forth. The Pac-12 council, the CEOs, the presidents, and the chancellors met many times during the week with a pivotal meeting yesterday that led to ASU and others joining the Big 12.
And was it primarily the financial disparity between on the revenue, on the media rights revenue between the Big 12 and the Pac-12 that was the deciding thing?
No. And so it's often the case in the media that the media thinks that the measurement of the success of our program is the media contract and the share per school. Well, the media contract is a fraction of our revenue relative to ASU athletics, even relative to football athletics and other athletics. And so we've got lots of revenue sources. We were very interested at ASU on finding a way to connect to more people and so forth. But we have to be in a viable conference to do that. And once Oregon and Washington decided to go to the Big Ten, the conference was no longer viable. And so viability meant you can't be in a non-viable position for more than a few hours in our mind. So we resolved that.
So was the Washington and Oregon departures kind of the final straw?
Yesterday morning at 7 a.m. was another called meeting of the Pac-12 presidents, and some schools didn't show up. So you might know that then, therefore, the conference is no longer viable.
Can you say how many didn't show up?
2.
How much responsibility do the two of you feel for the destruction of the Pac-12, or do you feel like it was ripped from you by other people?
Well, that's an interesting question. And so how do we feel about the destruction of the Pac-12, and what do we feel about our responsibility for that? We were the stalwarts fighting for the Pac-12 until the last ditch, I'm telling you.
I can reiterate that the destruction of the Pac-12 is a very bad description. We had nothing to do with it. We were trying to save it and stayed in the trenches as long as we could until it became clear that it was no longer in our control. So I take offense, very frankly, to the question, but I hope you get your answer. We were there to the last moment when it became clear that in the best interests of ASU and our student athletes, it was time to make a decision affirmatively and move.
So at that moment, just to be clear, so there was no media option at that moment. So the media option, which we preferred, was to go in a new technological trajectory where individual athletes and recruits and families could engage and fans could engage anywhere, anytime. Especially younger people coming up, it's a whole new world about television, and cable television's going in different kinds of directions. And so, you have 2 teams not present and no media contract, you got to act. So.
Can you discuss some of the benefits that you feel the Big 12 will bring you guys?
The fantastic thing about the Big 12, and I'll let Ray comment on this, is unbelievable athletic competition with concentrations of athletes in Texas and Oklahoma and Utah and other places where we can have great connections in a regional area. So we see it as a regional conference with a couple of exceptions. We see it as valuable from a competitive perspective. We are being admitted as a full founding member, as the original 8 of the Big 8. I'm a former Big 8 athlete. I was a javelin thrower at Iowa State. I went to all those schools, Stillwater, Manhattan, Lawrence, all those places back when Missouri was in and Nebraska was in, Boulder was in, by bus. All athletes traveled by bus 50 years ago. But we are a full member. All the Pac-12 schools going in are coming in as full members of the AAU. We were just elected to the AAU, the elite research universities of the United States, and so there's only one other AAU member that's from an academic perspective. So the 4 new schools going in, it's an exciting moment for the Big 12. It's an exciting moment for us athletically.
There's no question. Our biggest concern from day one with all of this, particularly when it became clear that we had to explore options, was what was in the best interest of the health and welfare of our student athletes.
And then talk about that relative to other options we had.
Because the other options would have taken us across country on trips that we think are not to the
I also went to
benefit.
Syracuse, and what did you say?
I'm not going to say publicly what I said about Syracuse, although I wasn't excited about taking our soccer team to Syracuse in the middle of fall season if we were going to go to the ACC.
He's afraid of the cold.
Yeah. So it made a lot more sense for the student-athlete experience and competitive to get into the Big 12. Preserve BYU and Utah, Colorado, and then get a chance to go into that Texas market where we got 4 new universities. We recruit down there. I think Kenny in particular has shown that he can recruit down there. And now it's even more in our bailiwick. And so from the student athlete experience competitively, and this just is not about football. And so when you think about the other sports, and how much more efficient and very frankly, competitively, how much better it's going to be. Very honestly, with USC and UCLA gone and Washington and Oregon, that wasn't a tough decision in terms of what was best for our student athletes, in my view.
So when I met yesterday for the first time in the first discussion that we had with the Big 12, which was 10:30 yesterday morning with the commissioner and 3 of the presidents, the president of Baylor, the president of Iowa State, and the president of Kansas, the focus was on how to build a solid, tradition-based, sports-focused, athlete success-focused conference of many, many schools. This is all new. The conferences all used to be small, 8 schools. The Pac-8 was the Pac before that. It had only 4 schools. And so now we're going into more and more and more. So we were focused on how do we make this work for our athletes? How do we make this work? And so to the question about is this all driven by resources? If it was all driven by resources, we wouldn't be in this business because there aren't enough resources coming to us from all the things that we're doing to cover all of our costs in athletics because we have many, many, many sports that are very expensive and generate no revenue. So all the focus, though, is on the revenue sports, men's basketball and football. We have a new revenue sport, hockey. We have a semi-revenue sport, baseball. So,
Growing.
What's the future of the Rose Bowl?
That's a conundrum because the Rose Bowl, not as a facility but as an event, is owned by the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. And so you might consider asking even people in the media business, why did they not want that to be maintained?
Dr. Crow, when you said that you're a full member, does that mean a full media share?
Yeah.
Dr. Crow, is there any scenario in which had Washington and Oregon remained committed to signing a grant of rights with the Pac that Arizona and ASU would have split up?
No.
Why do you elaborate on that?
Well, one, Arizona and Arizona State decided we wouldn't split up under any circumstance. So you can ask President Robbins about that. But we believe that we're strange fraternal twins.
At what point did you say that was determined for now?
Before we went into any uncertainty, we were together.
Dave Hickey and I have been talking about staying together since the first time, the thought that there would be additional defections from the conference after UCLA and USC.
I've spoken to President Robbins 100 times in the last 10 days.
What would you say to fans, alumni who are kind of eulogizing the PAC and saying this is regionality dying and kind of killing the spirit of college sports in that respect?
I share that view. And so we're moving to a slightly bigger region. And so, what we want to do take our players over here, our student athletes over here, we want their academic, athletic lives to be as successful as possible, and we have to find a way to do that, and this is the way that we have to go. But I mean, there are some big, huge issues relative to the design of college sports right now. And
when you talk about, obviously the Olympic sports and scheduling for football, basketball, men's and women's, but the other Olympic sports, are there going to be I don't want to say a limit, but like for the schools that are farther away, whether it's Florida, West Virginia, like
Divisions.
Yeah, you're gonna try to, in the Olympic sports, go to divisions, and probably do that in football as well. For travel, regionalization, it still makes sense, but it really makes sense for the Olympic sports. And so you might imagine our selfish interest is that if that keeps us with,
We're
again,
not giving you a remote office in Morgantown?
I promise I'm not going to Morgantown. I'm going to sign that to Gene Boyd. He can go to Morgantown. But send me to Texas and the rivalry with Arizona and start a new one with BYU and Utah and Colorado. That's where a lot of our Olympic sports
So look at
will
where
be
we are.
based.
So we have 2 schools in Utah, 2 schools in Arizona. We have the Colorado, and then we've got the schools in Texas. I mean, that's quite a nice little group of schools right there. So I don't know how that's going to end up, but that's a nice little regional group of schools. So.
Did you guys ever think of any other conference? I think you kind of referred to that before. Was there ever any thought or talk of any other conference?
You can
besides
imagine
the
that there was talk about everything. Ivy League turned us down. We really fought hard for that. I came from the Ivy League, so
And I went to law school at Harvard, so we thought maybe it made some
I was
sense.
a professor at Columbia, and he was a Harvard law graduate. So we used every bit of influence, and they said no.
But it's a fair question, certainly, over the course of all these months. You have to understand that you got to examine all the options. And so we had, at least at some level, conversations with, you name the conference.
There are lots of people trying to figure this out, but everybody's trying to figure it out from slightly different views. So Florida State apparently is out, thinking, can they build a privately funded college football network? Well, error.
Anything else?
Yeah, how significant are the travel costs going to be compared to what they have been in the past?
To be determined. To be determined. There's still a lot of work to be done.
Buses are good.
Yeah, buses are good. But in my mind, I'm thinking Texas or Oregon State or Pullman, Washington. You know what I mean? Oregon or even Seattle. I think there's some potential cost savings to be had depending on how you put it all together.
That's going to be in everyone's interest. No university wants to spend unnecessary money or have people travel extra hours or days to get back and forth to games. And so regionality then gets redesigned in these super conferences like the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the SEC.
I know you guys have enough on your plate, but any idea about Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, and Cal and their futures?
Fantastic athletic programs at all 4 of those schools. I mean, Oregon State and Washington State punch above their weight. I mean, it's unbelievable. Oregon State's ranked in the top 25 in football going into this season. Stanford is the winningest athletic school in the history of the United States across all disciplines. Ray was a Stanford athlete in 2 sports, varsity lettered in 2 sports. We don't know. I mean, we're very interested in being helpful in any way that we can.
A lot of Big 12 schools have similar revenue, at least publicly reported, but much fewer sports. So what do you think about that, Ray? What challenges are presented by that, if any?
Yeah, Ray, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, we didn't get into this business of adding sports to cut sports. At least I did not. And so we have every intention to continue all of our sports in the Big 12. And remember, all of our sports aren't sponsored in the Pac-12. And so, for instance, in water polo, we got Indiana as part of the conference that plays in the Pac-12. So we'll pick and choose our spots, but all of our student athletes will be able to play. And very frankly, some folks say, are you going to continue to play the teams in the remaining in the Pac-12, USC, UCLA,
Hopefully.
Cal, Stanford? Absolutely. Absolutely, particularly in the Olympic sports, because that's a great experience, and the student-athlete welfare is also a big factor. So
there's a lot of really competitive teams in California. We're interested in playing all of them. UC Davis and UC Irvine and other schools that are up and coming, and the state college like Long Beach State, the Dirtbags over there. All those folks are really on the rise.
Yeah.
So,
but the Big 12 sponsors 23 varsity sports. So I think for us, beach volleyball and lacrosse and hockey, but no one in the Pac-12 has hockey.
we're in a new conference.
We're in a new conference in hockey, as you know, so we're good there. But the Pac-12 doesn't sponsor all the sports. And when we added women's lacrosse, we added the 16 to make them a championship level qualifying league. We'll do that in lacrosse and beach volleyball, wherever we have to. Our student athletes will have a really good experience. And this will not detract from it. In fact, I can tell you, because we've talked to our coaches, a number of them, particularly in the Olympic sports, They couldn't be more pleased. Bobby Hurley couldn't be more pleased. Kenny couldn't be more pleased. Our volleyball coach couldn't be more pleased. Our wrestling coach couldn't be more pleased. Our golfing coaches couldn't be more pleased. And on and on. This was a good move in terms of the Olympic sports, and we're looking forward to it.
Everybody good?
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, great.